All right, so in the last video, we talked about the Cookie Monster theory. And in that video, we talked about the real Cookie Monster, the old grouch from old Sesame Street there. Um, and we also talked about a proverbial Cookie Monster. And I'm pretty sure we established in that video the correlation and that analogy. And so if you haven't watched that video yet, you're going to want to do that. I'll link it somewhere at the end of this video here. But this probably isn't going to make too much sense to you if you don't watch that one first. So I highly suggest that you go back and check that one out and then watch this one so it makes more sense. But anyway, today we're coming back with the things that we can do about it. In that video, we talked about all of the corruption that is now come into the light of the public. And so now, unless you're living under a rock, you are aware of the fact that there is very much corruption going on. And we talked about how in that other video, it is not just in Minnesota, and it's not just in blue states. This is going on everywhere from the top at the highest levels, the whole way down through to the lowest levels of local government. And this corruption, unfortunately, has just permeated all of these systems. And so we need to talk about what we can do about it. But before we do, I just wanted to kind of, because we talked about it, but we didn't really get into the details of this corruption. And so I looked it up just to present it to you in case you weren't aware, because the numbers are staggering. Staggering. And so when we're talking about this recent corruption that has come to light in Minnesota, what we're looking at, and this is just estimates of what they know so far. So you could pretty much bet that this number is way greater than what we're going to lay out here today, for sure. But just to, go over what they're admitting to at this point, we're talking about excesses of $9 billion in fraud in Minnesota's social services, which is insane. And in that video, we also talked about California and how if you think that's bad in Minnesota, maybe we should peek under the covers over there in old Cali, because I think the numbers we're going to see there are much, much higher. And so let's talk about a few of them, because I happen to jot a few of those down as well. And so we discussed how these systems are not going to fix themselves. There's just no way that's going to happen. And we used California's homeless problem as an example of this, because there was upwards of $24 to $37 billion that went to California's homeless crisis. And yet there's still a crisis, even after all of that. And if you think that throwing more money at it is the answer, well, come on now. When are we going to realize what's going on here? And then while we're talking about California, maybe you've heard about their little escapade into the high-speed rail out there, the train that all these investments were going into and all this funding was channeling into this whole idea of a train system out in California. Well, looking at that, I'm just going to refer to the tab on it because it lays it out here. But when we're talking about the California High-Speed Rail Project, it has spent approximately $15 billion over 16 years. And guess what? Still no train. Okay? And while the total projected cost is estimated at $135 billion, the Federal Railroad Administration terminated roughly $4 billion in unspent federal funding in July of 2025, leaving about 6.8 billion in total federal sources received. And so what does that mean? That the project's, done now? Well, if that's the case, what happened with this other 6.8 billion? Shouldn't that be returned? I mean, surely it should be returned, right? Wrong. And see, this is the problem, folks. This is never going to change. This is never going to change. This is it. This is what it looks like under this current system. The system of the Cookie Monster. Okay? Because the Cookie Monster, all he cares about is Sesame Street. And it just so happens that the only thing you should care about is your street. The only street I'm worried about is Casper Street. And likewise, you should only be worried about your street. And it's about time we start focusing on that. What do you say? So let's talk about it. What can we do about this? Because we've established in that other video that this system is beyond repair, unfortunately. Orange Man can't fix it. No man can fix it. No man can fix it. Only we can do this. And it starts with individual change. And so that's what we're going to be talking about here today, the actual solution. And if we can do these things on an individual level and succeed, and then more individuals do that, well, then collectively, that movement is what's required here to change things around, because relying on this system to fix itself, you're wasting your breath. And so these are the core pillars to real independence here, okay? And each one of these things is going to hit a different part of the system that you are currently plugged into. And this is what is required to starve the Cookie Monster of his cookies. Because without the cookies, there is no Cookie Monster. And that's what needs to happen here. And so where do we start? Well, for most of us, we have what's called an income. I know that, a lot of those in Minnesota, they don't operate off of an income, but common folk, we do. And so you have an income. And unfortunately for a lot of people, most people, that income is a fixed thing. It's not going to change. I mean, and if it does, it changes, very minutely, maybe from year to year with cost of living increases, or a raise if you've done a good job, or if you're your own business owner, perhaps you keep thriving and doing better, because you are in control of the progression forward. And so props to you if that's the case. But for most people, it's a basic income, and it's just a baseline is what we're dealing with here, okay? And it is that feeds the Cookie Monster, right? Because it comes right off the top of your income. That's where these cookies come from. That Cookie Monster needs to have to survive. And we have little effect on that. There's not much we can do in that area. But what we do have an effect on is the expenses, okay? And so we have to control our expenses. And that is what's required, is financial discipline. And so what does this look like? Well, it starts with killing consumer debt. That has to be first. We have to tackle the debt, and we have to not take on any more of it. We have to understand that is the shackles that's currently keeping us in this bondage that we find ourselves in here, okay? And then we need to downsize where it's possible. So look around and see, what is it that I absolutely need And what is it that I don't need? And those things, sell them off, get rid of them, whatever you need to do. If those things are not serving you in some way, let them go. And there's power in that. And there's a feeling of relief and freedom just in doing that alone. And then stop lifestyle inflation. And what does that mean? Well, for a lot of us, we work so that we can have things, right? I know that's how I was. I want something, I'm buying it. I work, I deserve to have what I want. I work hard for my money. If I want something, I'm going to buy it. We need to change this way of thinking. If it's not a necessity, you do not need it. And I know we've been programmed by, all the advertisements that we are consumed by on a daily basis here. And they program us to think that having this, having that, that's the keys to happiness. And everybody will think I'm cool if I have the newest shoes, dude. No one cares, man. Stuff does not matter. Let it go. This is the first step towards your freedom. Okay? We got to let those things go. Track every dollar so you tell your money where to go instead of it being the other way around. Okay? And so what does this look like? Well, we're talking about our expenses here. And so we have to break this down into two categories: necessities, wants. And we have to take all of our expenses, wherever our money is going, that's remaining from our income, and we have to assign it to one of these two categories and do this honestly so that you get it right, okay? Because it's only the things in this necessity category over here that you're going to be putting your income towards in the future. That's it. This stuff over here in the want category, we are done with that, okay? It could come back to that, but only after you're free. What good is it if you're a slave and have these things, right? Wouldn't it be much better to have them as a free person? So let's work towards our freedom first, and then we can worry about the wants. Until then, it's only the needs. So now that we've established that and we've assigned our money accordingly, what we should work on next is focus on developing high-value portable skills. And this is income independence. This is where we can begin to break away from this income we talked about in the beginning, because it's that income that's keeping you struggling constantly, barely able to get by. And it's that income that's being scraped off the top, feeding the cookie monster. Okay? So we need to develop these high value skills. And what does this look like? So you're going to want to learn skills that pay without a boss. Doesn't that sound good? To not have a boss, to possibly be your own boss. Freedom. That's what that is. And what we're talking about here is digital services, trades, coaching, repair, teaching. There is so many avenues here. And this thing that we're on called the internet, it is the biggest marketplace in the world. And so we all have an opportunity to be dabbling in it and making money there. And that's where we should be spending all of our excess time building systems to try and make money in this marketplace. And honestly, these things, what that does is it can build passive income, which is what leads to true wealth. Okay? And then aim for skills that can be done remotely or locally without licenses or gatekeepers, right? Because not only are they taking our tax money and it's funding all this fraud and corruption, but we're also, through our own tax money, suppressing ourselves through regulation, right? There's regulation around every turn. You can't do anything without a permit these days. I mean, it's insane. And it's our own money that's funding that suppression. That's why we got to tear this down. We got to starve the cookie monster. It's the only way. And then we need to focus on creating multiple income streams. As you grow in this and you grow in knowledge and you get better and more experienced, you can then start to, you know, look into other streams and try and develop other ways to make income. And then combine your active income, your services or the income from up above, with scalable income, content, products, digital assets, the things that we were talking about earlier that you can sell, on the internet, the biggest marketplace in the world. Surely everybody has some value in their individuality that is going to offer something to somebody out there amongst the 8 billion plus people that's looking for what you have to offer. There's got to be a customer for you out there. There has to be. So we need to focus on these things and dial in on this. And then we need to never rely on a single employer or platform for survival, because unfortunately, small businesses have been crushed. And so for many people, what you're working for is either a larger agency or a larger institution or some part of the government or corporations. And in all of those, because of the vast scale of employees that many of them have, you are just a number. So we got to watch getting too comfortable there. We think it's security, but I think that's a false perception, because they could let you go in an instant and not blink, okay, while your whole livelihood crumbles. I've seen it happen. And then we need to reduce dependency on corporations. And so what's that look like? Well, it looks like cooking at home, repairing instead of replacing, buying used instead of buying new, and supporting local producers. And this is very important, and it's definitely something I want to try and focus on personally this year, is stop spending money at these big corporations, even though there's convenience there. Oh yeah, I can go in Walmart and I can buy everything I need in one shot, and it's even a little cheaper. We're digging our own graves here, though, people. We need to consider the implications of these actions and what they actually mean. And so we need to be supporting smaller businesses, the few that are left. And then we need to try and start building them back up, and our own if possible. And we need to support those things, because they are going to be much more grateful for your money than what these big corporations ever will. Okay. And we need to learn basic maintenance, home repairs, and vehicle care so that we stop spending money. Because if these are things we can do, and it doesn't have to be perfect, right? If you do it yourself, it's rewarding. It doesn't have to be as perfect as maybe a professional would do, but at least you did it, right? And by not spending money, well, to me, that is the same equivalent as making money. And it's the same value there. And it's much more rewarding in the end. Grow or source your own food. This is an important one, and one that I'm very passionate about. We've been growing our own food for years and years and years. Start with gardens, chickens, food preservation. And if you can't do those things, support a local farm or co-op. Okay? And we need to understand that part of this is eating in season. That means that you're not going to be able to eat a fresh tomato in the dead of winter. It's just the way it is, and we need to get used to this, okay? And it's okay. It makes it more enjoyable when you can have that watermelon in the dead of summer instead of, in the winter, because you've waited for it, until then. And it tastes so much better. Same as, the sweet corn or that tomato or whatever it is. There's more joy in it if we're not consuming it constantly. And it's much healthier, because what you're buying at the store in many cases isn't even real food. And the stuff that is sprayed with so much garbage that it's not healthy for you anyway, and it defeats the purpose of even eating those things. And then food security, that equals leverage and peace of mind. Now, we just had a big storm roll through that just crushed a lot of states at once. And what we saw was empty shelves. Okay. And that's what that looks like when we rely on these things. Do you want to be fighting for that last loaf of bread in your survival? I don't. So we need to learn these other skills, and we need to become more self-sustainable and more dependent on our own systems instead of that one. We need to strengthen our physical and mental health, and this is another one I am passionate about, and it's what I've built this channel around. A weak body or an anxious mind keeps people dependent and compliant. That's the realization. So we need to prioritize strength, endurance, sleep, and clean nutrition, because we need to be strong so that we can be operating at our optimal levels, especially when we're trying to change these type of things in our life. And we need to have a clear mind, and we need to have clarity when we're making these big decisions, right? So we have to focus in on these. And I will also include, since I forgot here in these notes, that emotionally and spiritually, those things are just as important. And so we need to nurture all of those. And then we must build community and barter networks, because as that system starts to starve and that cookie man is growing thin, we need to have other type of things that we can rely on, right? And so we need to develop relationships with like-minded people who trade skills and labor and resources. And then this independence is not isolation, it's mutual strength. And that's how we operated for hundreds, if not thousands of years until here recently. And this is what happens when we try to design these systems around all these things. They end up corrupt. It's in our human nature. We got to keep things smaller in scale and at the local level, right? It's the same with this country worrying about that country the whole way over there across the pond. What does that have to do with us? And we're spending billions there, hundreds of billions there as well. It makes no sense. Big scale stuff does not work. Small is what works, and it always has. We try to build these systems. They fail every time. Own assets, not liabilities. Focus on tools, land, equipment, education, and skills that produce value. Avoid depreciating status symbols that lock you into more work, right? Everybody, oh, I got to have that newest, Tahoe. I ride around that Tahoe, buddy. Look at me. Oh, my new diesel truck, 100 G's, baby. Meanwhile, my house is a, $40,000 trailer, and I got a $100,000 diesel truck sitting out front of it. What sense does that make? No one cares. You think you're impressing people? No one cares. No one cares. So there's something freeing in you not caring what they think, because they're not even paying attention to you in most cases. But we spend all our time worrying about what people think. Well, I can tell you, with age comes the ability to not give a. That's a great thing. It's very freeing, and I hope you experience it someday if you haven't yet. Avoid depreciating status symbols that lock you into more work. That's what we're talking about, right? Those type of things. Vehicles are the worst. It's the worst thing that you can blow a bunch of money on. As soon as you pull that brand new vehicle off the lot, it is worth 10 G's less at least. What good is that? It makes no sense. No sense. Isn't it more rewarding to have a little beater that you work on and keep running year after year? Wouldn't that be more rewarding? Oh, I got 350,000 miles on that thing. That's more rewarding than pulling off the lot in a brand new shiny vehicle that no one cares about. And I know we seem to focus so much on these things, but this is what needs to stop. If you want this change, it's going to require you to change. And that's going to start here and here. And then limit information manipulation. I think we're all aware of this today, hopefully. Reduce mainstream media consumption and algorithmic addiction, because all the algorithm does is continue to feed you your own information bias. It keeps feeding you everything that you believe already. And so if you're never faced with opposing views, you're always right. The only way that we can come to, reliable conclusions on matters is through dialogue and debate and seeing the other side and weighing out these things to come to these conclusions. If it's only our side that we're always seeing, you're never going to change. And that's something we should all strive for, right? To be in the lane of facts and truth. That should be our compass. And so we need to be reading primary sources, studying history, think critically, and question narratives, because there is an agenda behind everything. And so we need to define our purpose and our long-term visions. That's what it is all about. Decide what enough is and stay underneath it. That's the name of the game here. People without a clear mission are easily controlled by fear, debt, and distraction. And we need to break those chains of fear. It's interesting. And I'm not trying to get biblical here, but I do want you to be aware of the fact that in that book, it mentions not living in fear more than it does any other thing. It commands you to not be afraid. 365 times, one time for each day of the year. Isn't that convenient? We shouldn't be living in fear, especially of these things, because we have some control over them. If we can break away from this system that's designed to keep us in that fear. So see, this is the name of the game, people. And if you are fed up, then you need to realize that this system is never, ever going to change. The only thing that's going to change it is the thing that built it, and that is consumerism. It started with industrializing everything, right? And mass producing everything. And then what did that lead to? It led to consumerism, and that consumerism is what led to this. Well, now what it's going to require to tear it down is something that's called anti-consumerism. And that should be all of our goals in 2026, especially when we get to start the year off with this fraud staring us right in the eyes. What are you going to do about it? You're going to rely on this system to fix itself? Are you really that naive? Come on. There's only one way to fix this system, and it is to starve the cookie monster. And this is how we do it. And so I plan on getting into some more things about this, because we can break this down even into more detailed, more digestible things that we can then put into action, right? And so I will be coming out with more videos. Please like this one, share it if you agree, subscribe to the channel, and hit the information bell, the notification bell, so that any new videos that come out, you will be notified of them. And hopefully you will stick around for this journey, because it's definitely the one that I'm on. And I hope that you will join me. So until the next one, I'm Brad Casper. This is Casper's Corner. We're out.